Get Mr. Billy Turner into the courtroom, please, after Phillips. Deputy Yancey, let everyone session. Also, those folks in the courtroom now, please. Yes, sir. Billy Ray Turner, good morning, sir. Have a seat, Mr. Turner. F. Smith, yes, bring in the jury, please, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Lorenzen. Good morning.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Can be seated. F. Smith. Someone needs to be here. Maybe one. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, good morning.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing?
Great.
Get any rest last night?
Yes.
Something, not much, not enough. I understand. How is the food? How are the accommodations?
Very good.
Are the deputies treating you reasonably well?
Yes.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, when we stopped last night, the state had indicated they had asked all the questions of Detective Browning, and there were a couple of omitted questions that Mr. Hagerman needs to ask before they submit Detective Browning for cross-examination. Detective Browning, where is he? Thought he was in the courtroom. Ask Jesse Browning to step back in the courtroom, please.
Yes, sir. Brown.
Detective Browning, good morning, sir. You walked right up to where Deputy Smith is, as I told you yesterday, since this is a new day. I need to swear you in again, please, sir. Put your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you will give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you, sir. You put your hand down, have a seat here, please, and watch the step. Brown and Deputy Smith reminded me this morning that some of the jurors say that you are very soft-spoken, and they need to speak up just a little bit louder.
Okay, I'm going to try to talk it.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hagerman, you may proceed.
Detective Brown, and after you testified yesterday, councils got together, and there are some more records that we need into evidence through you.
Okay.
So can you look at this? We don't need you to read it, but if you can flip through this and ask you if you recognize this collection.
And yes, these are going to be the text messages from Sherra Wright's phone. They were
So
extracted.
You testified earlier that at some point in 2010, detectives searched Sherra Wright's cell phone
That's correct.
and were able to obtain an extraction from the cell phone.
Yes.
And what are those things in front of you?
These are the text messages from that extraction.
So these are text messages from Sherra Wright's phone in 2010.
Yes, they're put on an Excel sheet, so it's an actual extra report where you take just the text messages from that.
Your Honor, I have those introduced at this time.
Mr. Perry and or Mr. Thomas, any objections?
No objection.
For the record, this is approximately a 13-page document described by Detective Browning as text messages that were extracted from the cell phone of Sherra Wright. During the course of his investigation in 2010, a 13-page document, text messages from Ms. Sherra Wright's phone. We proceed, Mr. Hagerman.
Detective, there's no need to review the entirety of this list presently, but I got you a couple questions, okay? When I'm looking at these text messages, there's a phone number that reads Edna J. Is that the contact name?
Correct.
And who was Edna J? Who is that person?
That's going to be Jimmy Martin.
Okay, so are there text exchanges from Jimmy Martin with Sherra Wright in these documents?
There are.
Are there also text exchanges from Billy Ray Turner and Sherra Wright in these documents?
Yes.
In particular, these text exchanges include the text message that we saw yesterday sent about 25 minutes before the murder from Sherra Wright to Billy Turner.
Yes, it does.
Were Facebook records also obtained during the course of the original investigation?
Yes.
Facebook records with regard to Jimmy Martin?
Yes.
I have just a 3-page document. If you can look at this and tell me what I'm looking at.
These are going to be messages exchanged between Jimmy Martin and Sherra Robinson. Sherra Wright.
Sherra Robinson, who's also Sherra Wright, is that
Right.
correct? And Jimmy Martin, who's also Jay Martin?
Correct.
Is that what's reflected in the Facebook records?
It is.
Your Honor, have that introduced as State 600.
Any objections, Mr. Thomas and or Mr. Perry?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection, this is a 3-page document. Exhibit number 5959, identified by Detective Browning as Facebook messages between Sherra Wright and Jay Martin. Sherra Wright, Sherra Robinson, also known as Sherra Wright and Jay Martin, exhibit number 59, a 3-page document. You may proceed, Mr. Hagerman.
Reviewing the document, I see that this Facebook exchange begins on June the 16th of 2010 and ends September the 9th of 2010. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
And I'm not going to ask you to attempt to decipher it, but have you read these Facebook messages?
Yes.
Do you believe that these conversations are in some type of rough or loose code?
Yes, it appears it would be.
Generally talking about what?
A party.
Can you
I'm
speak
sorry.
up, please?
A party.
A party.
It appears that Jimmy Martin and Sherra Wright are attempting to get a party together.
Do you believe they're getting a party together?
I do not.
What do you believe the party is?
I believe that they were using that as code for the killing Lorenzen Wright.
Okay. So you believe this is a rough or loose coded conversation in which the killing of Lorenzen Wright is referred to as getting a party together?
Correct.
And there'll be another witness who goes through this line for line,
Okay.
Detective. Those were the documents that counsel talked about that wanted introduced through you, Detective Brown.
Okay.
There's a couple questions I forgot to ask you yesterday.
Okay.
You reviewed phone records from 2010, correct?
Yes.
Including phone records belonging to Billy Turner?
Yes.
Including his phone records from the night of the homicide, is that correct?
Yes.
Were there phone calls from Jimmy Martin to Billy Turner the night of the homicide?
There were.
Were there phone calls from Billy Turner to Jimmy Martin the
Yes.
night of the homicide?
Yes. There were.
So there was back and forth.
Correct.
Were there also phone numbers from another phone in Batesville, Mississippi, to Billy Turner the night of the homicide?
Yes.
Was that phone number identified?
It was.
And what was it identified as?
A payphone in Batesville, Mississippi.
And where was this payphone in Batesville, Mississippi?
It was on 101 James Road, which is near Jimmy Martin's residence.
Did investigators actually go down there and look at the payphone?
They did.
Verify it was there?
Correct.
You said it was near whose residence?
It was near Jimmy Martin
Jimmy
in
Martin,
Batesville. Yes.
who lived in Batesville?
Correct.
You testified earlier, this is another thing I forgot to ask you. You testified earlier that there was evidence in 2016 that Sherra Wright would utilize other people's phones to make contact with Billy Turner. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was there also evidence in 2010, earlier, that Sherra Wright would use other phones to contact or be contacted by Billy Turner?
Yes.
In fact, did you review Billy Turner's phone records? You've already testified you did. You reviewed his phone records from the night of the homicide and the morning after the homicide?
That's correct.
Was there evidence of a phone call from Billy Turner to a phone other than Sherra Wright's that you believe Sherra Wright was using?
Yes.
And what was that from?
That would have been Lorenzen Jr.'s phone.
The kid?
Yes, her child.
The 14, 15-year-old.
15-year-old, yes.
And who contacted whom?
It appeared to be a back and forth after the homicide.
And was this the morning after the homicide?
Yes.
Back and forth between Billy Turner and
Lorenzen
Wright
Jr.'s cell phone.
Jr.'s Snoop's cell phone.
That's correct.
That's all my questions,
Hagerman. Mr. Thomas, you may proceed.
Good morning, Detective Brown.
Good morning.
Detective Browning, at what point during this investigation did you join it?
It was 2016.
2016. Did this investigation have a name?
Yes.
What was the name of the investigation?
Operation Rebound.
And during Operation Rebound, please explain what your role was.
My role was to kind of keep hold of all the evidence that we were getting and collecting, review the records, the statements. Even though we had a team that was doing that too, I was also kind of keeping charge of like all the paperwork, trying to keep everything together.
were you privy to all aspects of Operation Rebound?
Yes.
So there was nothing associated with the Operation Rebound that you didn't know about. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would know about it.
Let me ask you, Mr. Hagerman, from yesterday till today, asked you to identify a number of pieces of evidence, photos, and the like. Let me ask you about 452 Teoram Lane. Who lived at 452 Teoram Lane in 2010?
It was Lorenzen Wright, I think Jeremy Orange, and yet another roommate. I forget his name.
Did you ever personally go to 452 Teoram Lane?
I did not.
So the photos that were introduced into evidence of 452 Teoram, you didn't personally take those photos, did you?
I did not.
Do you know who took those photos?
I do not.
On exhibit number 7 was a diagram. I'm sorry. Exhibit number 3. Pass this.
Yes, sir, man.
Exhibit number 3, that's a overview of a Google Maps of 452 Teoram Lane and an IHOP. Is there any particular reason why an IHOP is highlighted in that particular street overview?
I do not know. I would only assume that it has to do with, I know that in Jimmy's statement, he makes a statement about an IHOP that they were at or something. But other than that, I do not know.
Do you happen to know back in 2010 if Lorenzen Wright had a alarm system at his home at 452 Teoram?
I do not.
Let me ask you about 4530 Whispering Woods. Who lived at that address in 2010?
Sherra Wright?
Do you know if Lorenzen Wright ever lived at that address?
I do not. I know that he frequented there, but I do not know if he actually lived there.
Do you know how long Sherra Wright actually lived at that address?
No, I do not.
Do you know where Sherra Wright and Lorenzen Wright lived prior to Sherra moving to 4530 Whispering Woods?
I don't remember it, but I do remember it being somewhere in East Tennessee, I think.
Have you ever personally been there?
I have not.
And so you didn't take the photos that were entered into evidence of that address as well either, did you?
Correct, I did not.
You also entered different shell casings associated with the Callis cutoff location where Lorenzen Wright's body was located, correct?
That's correct.
Do you know exactly how many of the 25 shell casings were collected out there?
What do you mean by collected?
The spent shell cases, were there any 25 spent shell cases collected on the scene out there?
Yes.
Do you know how many?
I don't remember that. It was whatever was on the graph, I can't remember.
Would it help if you had exhibit 15?
Yes, that would be.
Exhibit 15, Brown, please. Stop. That's better. 15 would be.
Yes, sir. Sure. Five?
Yes, sir.
Now, I'd like to ask you about the text message that you were asked about on yesterday. I believe that would be the text message between Sherra Wright. That was exhibit 44, the text message between Sherra and Billy Turner. I'm sorry, Exhibit 43. Let me, do you know the context of that text message?
No.
Lorenzen Wright was a favorite son of the city, played high school ball, college ball. He raised a family here, correct?
Yes.
So it stands to reason that he knew a lot of people who lived in this city, correct?
Yes.
So read that text message to me once again.
I'm going to need my commission. Ren want you to bring your cards in the AM before you fly out. You owe me, boy.
So isn't it true that he could possibly, Ren could be one of these business cards to give to people who he knows in this city, correct?
Yes, I mean, it could be possible, yes.
There is nothing in that text message between Sherra Wright and Billy Turner that sets up any kind of murder or killing of Lorenzen Wright, is there?
On the surface, no.
On the surface. Read the text message again.
I'm going to need my commission. Ren want you to bring your cards in the AM before you fly out. You owe me, boy.
Who sent the text to who?
Share it, Billy.
Share to Billy. And in that text message, it doesn't say, I'm going to need you to murder Lorenzen Wright, does it?
It does not.
It asks about business cards that Ren wants from Billy Turner.
Correct.
Which you've already said that Billy Turner was a yard man at that time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Through your investigation, were you ever able to uncover $50,000 in Mr. Turner's bank account?
I was not.
What about $25,000?
I was not.
So, was Billy, to the best of your knowledge, was Billy Turner the beneficiary of a $1 million life insurance policy from Lorenzen Wright?
Not $1 million policy, no.
Was Billy Turner the beneficiary of Lorenzen Wright's NBA pension?
He was not.
So, through your investigation, there was no money given from Sherra Wright to Billy Turner, correct?
It didn't appear that he got cash for what he did. Yes.
Those text messages that Mr. Hageman just asked you about that was just entered into evidence, are those all the text messages from Sherra Wright, or are those just the relevant text messages that Operation Rebound found relevant?
I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure those are like the complete, because if you see in there, there's other individuals that she's communicating with, and if you see the highlighted part, the highlighted part was not significant to its importance. It was just to organize who was who so that you didn't have to keep looking at each individual name.
After you stated yesterday in your direct with Mr. Hageman that Operation Rebound leaked to the media that a gun was recovered in a body of water in Mississippi, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And at that point, you had Sherra phones tapped and she came to Memphis, correct?
That's correct.
You stated that she met with Billy Turner when she came to Memphis, correct?
Yes.
But that's not all who she met with during that time, is it?
No, that's not.
Matter of fact, she met with a number of people, didn't she?
She met with several people, yes.
She met with an ex-husband,
Yes.
correct? she met with several other friends, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So to characterize her visit as solely coming to see Billy Turner, that wouldn't be correct at all, would it?
Can you say that again?
To characterize that once Operation Rebound leaked that a gun was found in the body of water and she immediately came to Memphis to meet with Billy Turner, that's not an accurate depiction, is it?
I would say it was the only person that she met in secret, where it was done through a second person, like a second party. She called her ex-husband, and she called her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend Kelvin. I don't know if they were married. So those were open conversations where she wasn't hiding those meetings.
But she met with a number of people.
She did meet with them.
Detective Browning, during Operation Rebound, you would meet sometimes with Claudia Robinson, or investigators would meet with Claudia Robinson to exchange recording devices that she used to record her conversations with Sherra Wright. Do you have a copy of the script that you provided for her to follow during those conversations?
So I wasn't directly involved in that. I knew about it, and I knew that it was being conducted, but at the same time, I was doing 10-day reports and trying to manage the wire aspect. So even though I know what's going on, we're talking about it, how they went about it, or if they did it verbally, or if they gave her transcripts, I do not know. I didn't see transcripts in the case file, so I would have to assume that they were directing her or talking to her about it.
So, to the best of your knowledge, in which you told me earlier that you were privy to all aspects of Operation Rebound, there was no script, correct?
Well, I'm going to assume that they're guiding her because they're giving her a recorder and they're asking her to make these phone calls. So they're guiding her through that, yes.
So, do you have a copy of a script? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, I do not. I do not have a copy of the script.
Yeah, if I got one more.
I'm sorry, sir. I apologize.
Just one other question. I want to go back. When Sherra, after the media had leaked, after Operation Rebound had leaked to the media that a gun was found in the body of water, I asked you about who Sherra came to visit and spoke with. During that time, it wasn't Billy Turner who was trying to contact Sherra. Sherra was the one who was contacting Billy, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And were you able to see the text messages or that Sherra sent to Billy during that time?
Through the
Yes.
third party?
Through the third party.
Yes.
To the best of your recollection, did Billy even recognize who this was who was trying to contact him?
I don't think at first, no.
He did. No other questions, John.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Hagerman, you have any additional questions of Detective Browning?
No, sir.
Deputy Smith, can you please give to Detective Browning Exhibit 58, please? You're going to need this for this question from the jury. Okay. I know Mr. Hagerman told you he did not want you to publish or go through all the text messages that were sent or exchanged from Sherra Wright. But the question from the jury, I'm going to read exactly as it's written. Quote, who else did Sherra or Billy text the night of the murder? Question mark. Besides Jimmy? Question mark. In parentheses, calls after 10 p.m. or text? Question mark, close parenthesis. Now, if you can answer that question, I'll ask Deputy Smith to give you that information because it might assist you in that answer. But if you can answer that question, you can answer it for the jury, please, sir.
So I can tell you, yes, there were other, I do remember, there were other communications with other individuals. I know of one particular was of Billy Turner. Of course, you can't tell if they communicated, but there was a transaction between him and what appeared to be his girlfriend at the time, or a girl. Sherra's text messages were pretty limited right after the homicide for a brief period. I think the next one that I saw was probably at 1 a.m. I don't know if it was that night or the following night. I'd have to see, but it was between her and Billy. Which would have been. And she also was sending outgoing text messages to Lorenzen himself. So yes, there was other communications with other individuals. I don't know if that answered the question.
We'll see in a minute. Ms. Haggard, any additional questions?
Well, I don't think it totally answered the question that the juror had. I think the juror question was, after about 10 p.m. the night of the homicide.
Let's take Sherra first.
Okay.
Was Sherra texting people other than Jimmy Martin and Bill Turner?
No, she didn't text Jimmy, and then the only text was with Billy Turner. I think that was at that time period, right before, like 25 minutes before the murder.
Okay, was she placing or receiving phone calls from anybody other than Jimmy Martin or Billy Turner?
No.
Okay, so if you look at those records in front of you, does she have any texts or any phone calls with anybody else, let's say from 10 p.m. that night of the murder till 8 a.m. that next morning? Texts or calls with other friends or anybody else that's identified?
Started talking about the 10 o'clock on the 18th.
Going to about 8 in the morning of the 19th.
Yeah, I'm making sure that these are in order. So it appears no. So, of course, you saw or you heard where she sends the text to Billy Turner about the commission, and then after that, Billy sends a response, which is okay. The next text that she sends is to Lorenzen, which is a text saying, "I'm not tripping, but the kids waited for you all day. Junkie was here looking for you," and it would be Cordell. I'm not sure what she was trying to say here, to tell somebody something. Maybe she meant cordial. And I know Junkie to be the alias for Jeremy Orange, which is who was picking up Lorenzen in the morning.
Lorenzen's friend who was picking up him and the kids?
Correct.
Okay, so what time
Would
was
she have sent this text?
She sent this text at 1:27 a.m.
On what day?
on the 20th.
So we're past the 19th.
Yeah, that's the next one after.
Okay, so is that the next text that she sends after the commission text to Billy Turner?
Correct.
All right, so no text for an entire day.
Correct.
All right. Do you remember, the question wasn't just about text, I think. Do you remember whether or not Sherra was making phone calls after about 10 o'clock the night of the murder until into the next day?
I think that she didn't have any communication until the morning.
Okay, the next morning?
Correct.
Okay. And was it that next morning that you saw the communications between Billy Turner and the phone belonging to the 14-year-old Snoop?
Yes, Lorenzen Jr., yes.
And then I think the question also was about Billy Turner after about 10 o'clock at night in the phone records, was Billy Turner communicating with anybody other than Sherra Wright or Jimmy Martin?
I know he was communicating with his, I think it was his girlfriend.
Okay, is her name reflected in the line sheets that you have?
No, this is going to be just with Sherra. It's just text
Those are
messages.
just
There's no
Sherra's
call
phone
logs or
numbers.
anything.
Okay. So you know that Mr. Turner was communicating?
I do remember him communicating with her, but I'm not sure who else. I'd have to see the actual records.
And I know this may help. There's a phone expert coming in today who has all the records that were obtained in 2010.
Yes.
And I'll remember that question for when he testifies, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
That's all my questions I've been trying to answer.
Thank you, Ms. Hagerman. Mr. Thomas, any additional questions?
Just,
Yes, sir.
the call that was from Snoop, the son of Sherra and Lorenzen, that was a call from Snoop to Billy Turner. Billy Turner didn't initiate the conversation, correct?
I would have to look at the records. I know it's been a while, but it was a back and forth. So I think it started around 6 in the morning, but I'm not sure. But I know that there is a back and forth that starts up between his cellular phone and Lorenzen Jr.'s cellular phone. Who initiated, I do not remember.
Just 1 second.
Yes, sir. Ms. Hagerman, any additional questions?
Oh, no further questions. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Detective Browning, I'm going to excuse you from any additional testimony in this case. You cannot discuss your testimony with anyone or allow anyone to talk to you about their testimony. Thank you for being present in court yesterday and today. And make sure you stay safe, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir. Sit down and watch your steps, please. Counsel, approach, please. Servinia Braswell, please. Special Agent Braswell, good morning. Come to where Deputy Smith is standing, please. You have something in your left hand. Hand it to Deputy Smith for a moment. Put your left hand on the Bible. Raise your right hand to be sworn. You can hand that to Deputy Smith also. He'll hold it back for you. You got it. He'll hold it for you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you will give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you, ma'am. You have the bottle back. Have a seat here. Watch your step. How are you doing this morning?
Good.
Good to see you again. Mr. Schofield, you may proceed, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Braswell, usually the judge will tell you this, but if you're more comfortable with your mask off, you can
I
take it off.
apologize. I should have told you that. If you want to take the mask off, you may certainly take it off. Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry, Judge, I was trying to jump ahead.
No, you're fine. I was writing up. Forgot to look up and see if you had a mask on. You may proceed, Ms. Schofield.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Braswell, can you state and spell your name for the jury and for the court reporter, please?
Servinia Braswell, CerviniaBraswell.
And where are you employed?
I'm employed by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation.
And how long have you been employed there?
17 years.
And what do you do for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation?
I'm a special agent assigned to the training unit. Prior to that, I worked for 15 years as a special agent forensic scientist in the firearms identification unit.
And firearms identification, how long did you do that? 15 years, you said?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could explain to the jury what exactly firearms identification is?
That's examining firearms to make sure they work properly, looking at bullets and cartridge cases to determine if they were fired from a specific gun or fired in the same gun.
And what kind of training did you have to go through to get that job?
I have a 2-year on-the-job training program involving the microscopic examination of over 1,000 fired bullets, cartridge cases, shot shells, and other ammunition components to determine the specific firearm that they were fired in, as well as examining firearms to determine if they were functioning properly. I trained under 7 court-qualified firearms examiners with over 100 years of combined experience. As part of that training, I toured many of the firearm manufacturing plants located throughout the Northeast United States, as well as the Remington and Winchester ammunition plants. This allowed me to see firsthand how those manufacturers tool and machine their products and what marks those machining processes leave on the fired ammunition components as well as those firearms.
And could you even, well, I guess, give us a ballpark figure for how many firearms or shell casings you've examined?
Well over, I'd say, 20,000 all together.
Okay. And have you ever testified as an expert in firearms identification before?
I have.
Could you give us an estimate of how many times that's been?
142.
So an exact number, 142. A lot of them probably right here in this building, right?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to tender Agent Braswell as an expert in firearms identification.
Ms. Perry, Mr. Thomas, any objections to the tender of Special Agent Braswell as an expert in her field, or any questions regarding her qualifications?
No objection, Your Honor, no board action.
Ms. Perry. Ladies and gentlemen, Juror, I'm going to declare to you that Special Agent Sabrina Braswell is an expert in her field, which is firearms identification. Normally, the person testifying in court can only testify in the form of factual and give you factual answers. A person qualified or declared to be an expert based on a person's training, education, background, experience, can give you testimony in a form of opinions and give you reasons for those opinions, and the court, in fact, will declare Special Agent Braswell an expert in her field of firearms identification and should be able to provide to you opinion testimony. You may proceed, Mr. Schofield.
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent Braswell, could you explain to the jury exactly how you go about doing your firearms identification?
Yes. Can I step down?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
So every firearm has its own unique markings, and these marks are primarily the result of the manufacturing process. So things such as the changing of the surface of the tool being used to make the firearm, any chatter or vibrations of those tools, in addition to use, misuse, corrosion, rust, even cleaning the firearm adds to the uniqueness of these marks. These are what we call individual characteristics for the gun's mechanical fingerprint. They're unique to a particular firearm. When the barrel of a firearm is made, it receives or is manufactured rifling in it. And the rifling, the purpose of that is to force the bullet to spin as it exits the barrel, and that's for accuracy purposes. So it's like a quarterback throwing a football. You want it to spiral out of his hand so it'll hit its intended receiver. The manufacturer will determine how many lands and grooves they cut to the firearm, the direction of the twist of those lands and grooves, and the width of those lands and grooves. They also determine things such as the shape of the firing pin. Is it round? Is it rectangular? Those are what we call class characteristics, and they're common to a group of firearms. So an everyday example would be if I walked out into a parking garage and I was trying to find my red Jeep Wrangler. Everything that's not a red Jeep Wrangler we could exclude based on class characteristics. Now I'm looking for individual characteristics. So what makes it my Jeep Wrangler? There's my plate number, there's my vehicle identification number, there's scratches I know I put on the door of that vehicle, and there's my sunglasses sitting on the dash. So that is individual to me. So there's several things that happen in a firearm during the firing process. Part of that is a cartridge. They're loaded into the magazine of the gun of a semi-automatic pistol. That magazine is inserted into the grip area of the firearm. The slide, or the top portion of that gun, is pulled to the rear and released. As it moves forward, it takes this top cartridge and pushes it into the chamber of the gun. Now when the trigger is pulled, the firing pin moves forward and it strikes the back area of the cartridge case that's known as the primer. That creates a spark, and that spark lights the gunpowder that's inside the cartridge. So when enough pressure builds up, it forces that bullet out and down the barrel and out of the gun. So as that bullet travels down that barrel, that gun's individual characteristics or mechanical fingerprint scraped along the surface area of the bullet. And those marks are what we look at under a comparison microscope to determine if two bullets were fired from the same firearm. That same pressure takes this cartridge case and slams it back up against what we call the breech face of the firearm. And that's the thick block of metal that surrounds the firing pin. That pressure causes that slide to move rearward, and the extractor holds this cartridge case in place. So it moves all the way to the rear until the cartridge case comes in contact with the ejector, which kicks the cartridge case out of the gun. That's why on scenes you often find fired cartridge cases at the scene. And again, those are the marks left by the breech face and the firing pin that we look at on the back of the cartridge case under the microscope to determine if two cartridge cases were fired from the same firearm. So I can compare bullets to bullets and cartridge cases to cartridge cases, but not bullets to cartridge cases because they're marked by two totally different parts of the firearm.
Let's go for the proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. And as a part of that, you can match casings to casings to bullets, but can you also match casings to a gun and bullet to a gun?
Yes. And we do that by test firing the gun that gives us fired bullets that we know came from that particular gun, fired cartridge cases that we know came from that particular gun, and have that gun's mechanical fingerprint present. And we compare those to any evidence bullets and cartridge cases to see if that fingerprint is present there as well.
All right, now, for this particular case, 10070155548, I believe your lab number is 103004886. Did you examine some bullets and shell casings and a firearm for this particular case?
I did.
I'm going to pass forward what's been previously marked as exhibit number 57 and ask you if you recognize this.
I do. It's got a barcode that was generated by our laboratory. It's got our unique laboratory case number and exhibit number on it. It's got the date and my initials when I opened the package. It's got my seal and the evidence tape and my initials where I sealed the package when I was done with my examination.
Okay. And if you could just open that and confirm it is the 9mm pistol you examined.
It is.
All right. And now, did this particular weapon, this particular case, present some unusual factors for you?
It did.
Could you tell the jury about that?
The firearm came in water, and the firearm was covered in dirt and black sludge type material. So before I could test fire the gun or before it would even function properly, I had to soak the gun in what we call penophyte. It's a chemical that removes a lot of the corrosion and things present on the firearm. And then after I was able to move the slide and get the parts to function a little bit, I took the gun apart and soaked each of the parts in the same type of solution. And I was able to clean the gun up so I could test fire the gun or attempt to.
Because would it be safe to say that a gun that's been sitting in a lake for 6 years would be in some pretty rough condition?
Yes.
And does your cleaning the gun or any of that affect the grooves in the barrel or the breech where marks are made on the shell casing?
No, it did not.
Okay. So once you were able to clean the gun up and get the gunk and rust and stuff off of it, were you able to test fire the gun?
I wasn't able to test fire it in its condition because there were two parts inside the gun that were broken. There was a sear spring inside the gun that was broken and an ejector spring. The sear spring kept the gun from the hammer from cocking and being able to fire. So what I did is take the slide, the top portion, which with that comes the barrel and the breech face. So everything that I would look at under the microscope on test fire bullets and cartridge cases, I was able to remove that and put it on a reference frame that we have in our ball. So those are guns that we use. In this case, if a gun comes in that's not working, we can use parts from that gun to be able to test fire it. So that's what I did in this case, to get test fired bullets and cartridge cases.
Okay, were you able to do that in this case?
I was.
Pass you forward what's been previously marked as exhibits number 35, 33, and oh yeah, I'm going to add previously marked number 34. Do you recognize that?
I do. It's got my same identifying marks.
And what's contained in that envelope?
This contains 9 9mm cartridge cases.
Okay. And did you examine those cartridge casings?
I did.
And did you compare them to the cartridge casing you test fired in that pistol up there?
I did.
And what did you discover?
I determined that these 9 cartridge cases were fired from that pistol.
Okay. Also going to pass forward with some previously marked as exhibit 33. Do you recognize that exhibit?
I do. It has my same identifying marks.
Okay, and did you, now that has some difference, they're not all 9mm shell casings, right?
Correct.
Is there one 9mm shell casing that isn't there?
Yes,
Did that also in fact match that pistol?
it did.
And what are the other shell casings you examined?
There is a 380 auto caliber cartridge case and 5 25 auto caliber cartridge cases, or in metric 6.35.
Okay, and obviously those 25 caliber cartridge casings, do those go to that gun?
No, they did not.
It's a different caliber pistol.
Yes,
But did those 5 cartridge casings, did you compare those casings?
yes, I compared those to each other, and they were all fired from the same unidentified firearm.
Also pass up 3, what's been previously marked as exhibit number 35. Did you examine those items as well?
I did.
And what are those?
There's 2 jacketed hollow point bullet jackets and 1 jacketed hollow point bullet.
And did you examine those, and what did you discover when you did examine?
I did. Determined that one of these had the same class characteristics, yet the individual characteristics were insufficient for a more conclusive identification. And I determined that 2 of these had been fired from that particular gun.
From the 9mm?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'll pass up exhibits number 36, 37, and 38. Did you also examine those fragments or bullet fragments that came from the medical examiner's office?
I did. They have my same identifying marks.
And what did you discover with those?
There was one from the right arm that had no marks of comparison value. And what that means is when a bullet strikes something, whether it be an object or person, a lot of times that bullet will break apart. And depending on where that bullet breaks apart, it may not touch the actual barrel of the bullet. So, for example, if this bullet impacted something and the top broke apart, the top never came in contact with the right one. So it's not going to have any marks for me to look at. There are 2 25 auto caliber bullets, and I determined that they had been fired from the same unknown firearm. And there's a bullet jacket that was recovered from the head And it was determined that it too bear the same class characteristics, yet insufficient characteristics, individual characteristics, when compared to that firearm.
So the 9mm.
Yes.
So, for your example, it's a Jeep Wrangler, but we can't exactly tell if it's yours.
Right. And a lot of that, or some of that, could be attributed to these bullets sat out in, for better terms, decomposing tissues and fluids for a while, and that can cause problems when looking at them later.
And so when we're talking about the 9 bullet casings, those are from the callus cutoff area, correct?
Yes.
The 9mm 9 bullet casing.
Yes.
And then we have a separate 380, 25 caliber, and 1 9mm bullet that are also from the callus cutoff area.
Yes.
Okay. And the bullets we're talking about that were, I mentioned, from the medical examiner's office that was found in his head and his body, those would be bullets actually physically recovered from Lorenzen Wright's body.
Yes.
And then we had 2 additional ones you said were from the match the gun, one that had the same class characteristics, also from callus cutoff.
3, but yes.
3. But 2 you could match, 1 you could say it was just the same class characteristic.
Yes.
Okay. So all the 9mm casings, the ones found by the body and the ones found up by the street, all 9mm casings match that gun.
Yes.
Thank you. No questions, comments? Thank you, sir. Special Agent Braswell, thank you for being present in court today. I'm going to excuse you for an additional testimony. Make sure you stay safe.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
It's good to see
Thank
you
you.
again. Yes, ma'am. Take your time gathering up all your belongings. Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe the state's next witness will be Dr. Marco Ross. Is that correct? Shelby County Chief Medical Examiner. And his testimony might take a little bit. So instead of starting the testimony and having to take a recess, we'll take a break for right now. Remember, of course, instruction cannot discuss the case with anyone amongst yourselves. And we'll start with Dr. Ross in a few minutes. You can follow Deputy Smith, please. Thank you. For the record, the jurors out. Is there anything else we need to discuss or address before we take a recess? May call the court into recess. Everyone can remain seated.
We'll stand to recess.
Deputy Phillips.